Hello, my name is Hasan Sorrells, and this is the Leadership Lessons from the Great Books podcast shorts. There's no co-host on these shorts episodes. These are now around 2 to 4 minute, sometimes as long as 6 to 10 minute observations, ideas, thoughts, or rants about the literature, philosophy, psychology, and even the theology of leadership. Because listening to me talk about leadership for now around 2 to 4 minutes is still better than reading and trying to understand yet another business book. Even that business book your coworker won't stop raving about because it quote-unquote changed their life, but you can't see any difference in their leadership behavior. So how good could that author be? There is a definite vibe shift occurring within the American voting and general population. Perhaps this shift in culture, mores, standards, traditions, and celebrations is indicative of the ways in which our current cycle of cultural evolution will eventually resolve itself into a species of calm. The American cultural landscape can be divided distinctly into 3 or maybe even 4 groups. The first group is people who are perpetually online. They love the drama inherent in being online, or they use the tools of the internet for work 90 to 95% of the time. They are our early adopters of artificial intelligence tools, and they know all about Sabrina Carpenter and Bethany Frankel, and they have opinions about both of them. They don't consider themselves political, but they have strongly held political opinions and are willing to yell at you loudly using whatever social media platform is of the current moment. The second group of people are those who use the tool of the internet primarily for work, and they have a smart television in their house, but they don't really consider anything that happens online to have any relevance to their real lived lives. Sure, their kids all have the latest iPhones because technological progress is the idol that must be worshipped, but they make no distinction between the use of the tools and the way the tools impact their communication lives. As casual consumers of entertainment and casual doers of work, they are surprised when the communication challenges and trends they face online suddenly and obsequiously catapult into their living rooms or manifest in their children's lived behaviors. Politics barely enters their imagination once every 4 years or so. The third group of people are those for whom the entire internet, tools, personalities, cultures, and all is fake, kefab, not bona fide. They recognize the internet and the communication structures built on top of it as being useful, mostly for making money, creating quote-unquote content, or for needling the members of groups 1 and 2 into some sort of reactive action. But they don't give their kids cell phones or tablets, and they strictly monitor Netflix usage in their household. The third group of people look at people in the first and second group as being like sheep led to the slaughter, usually by people like them. People in this third group are very political and know what's going on in current events, but also are able, with varying degrees of difficulty, to shove all that aside intentionally and live in the real world as it is with real people. The final group of people are those who are struggling to wake up and escape the trap of the long cultural now as it manifests both in online spaces and increasingly in real world ones. These are the people who consistently are looking for ways to not engage online and would throw their cell phones away if not for the work they had to do. They have already made up their minds years ago about politics, and their political opinions were formed way back in the early 90s. And they haven't really deviated that much. They don't know what's happening in online culture because they have long determined that none of that culture is real. People who are in this space in white-collar roles don't have a computer or a laptop in their homes. Hell, like I said, they struggle to have a cell phone. People who are in blue-collar roles in this mindset and in this group struggle to keep their kids from falling into group number 1 in their own house. They are the people, uniting with the folks in the third group, who will eventually build the physical world that needs to exist to house the data centers that will eventually create the robots that will eventually put them all out of existence. From where will the social calm come? Well, The general state of psychological and spiritual change in American culture usually comes when people decide, somewhat collectively, quietly, arbitrarily, and with little fanfare, to move in one direction or another. And we tend to do these moves as a population without directly communicating what the move will actually be, and not without a fair bit of public communication in the forms of arguments between intellectuals, influencers, media personalities, and celebrities. All of that argumentation, of course, is designed to convince us to move one way or the other. The calm comes when 51% of us ignore all that noise and claptrap and just quietly change. What's the point of all this? Well, for leaders, I recommend you pay less attention to the vibe shift and pay more attention to who is shifting and the energy underneath them that animates them. And well, that's it for me.
Thank you for listening to the Leadership Lessons from the Great Books podcast today. And now that you've made it this far, you should subscribe to the audio version of this show on all the major podcast players, including Apple iTunes, Spotify, YouTube Music, and everywhere else where podcasts are available. There's also a video version of our podcast on our YouTube channel. Like and subscribe to the video version of this podcast on the Leadership Toolbox channel on YouTube. Just search for Leadership Toolbox and hit the subscribe button there on YouTube. And while you're doing that, leave a 5-star review if you like what we're doing here on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. Just go below the player and hit 5 stars. We need those reviews to grow, and it's the easiest way to help grow this show. And tell all your friends, of course, in leadership. By the way, if you don't like what we're doing here, well, you can always listen to another leadership show. There are several other good ones out there. At least that's what I've heard. All right. Well, that's it for me.